Welcome to my channel, my first ever video on this channel, which is super exciting because I've been wanting to do this for quite some time now. Finally pulled the trigger. I usually only really post on TikTok and Instagram about my deep, deep love for books, and so I'm excited to share it on this platform as well. So for this first video, we're just gonna go over some of my favorite books, just so you can kind of get an idea like who I am as a reader, what books define my taste. Again, these are just some of my favorite books, which I usually only read fantasy or romance. I am trying to break away from that and try some other genres. I just haven't done it yet. So let's pull some of these books off my shelf and go over some of them. Okay, so I ended up pulling 10 books off the shelf. I could have kept going. I had to stop myself because I would be forever editing this video if I kept pulling books. So we're gonna start with my absolute most favorite because I feel like that's the best way to start. So let's start. Also, if it's a series I love, I only pulled the first book because that's just a lot easier, okay? So starting with my all-time favorite books that made me love reading in like a whole new way. My favorite author, I just have so much respect for this author. I don't know how her brain does it. Just all the things that she has come up with for this mass universe that she has created. And if you don't already know, just by the little hints I just gave you, now you do. Sarah J. Maas. I'm obsessed with her, and if you follow me on TikTok, you know, because I talk about her books all the time and just how much I love them. And literally, I'm like, seriously, like I couldn't even explain to you how much these series mean to me as a reader. I'm already stumbling with my words because there's just so much you could say about this series, and I don't want to get it wrong. Like, I want you to understand how amazing these books are that she has written. Now, if you're wondering why Crescent City is not in my hands right now, I'm trying to let you know I did love Crescent City. I thought they were really good books. They're not complete yet, but neither is ACOTAR, if you did not already know that. I just don't love them as much as I love these two. It's still a really good storyline. I like how they're all interconnected and all the little Easter eggs that we get throughout all these series to kind of see how they're linked together. And just that the fact that they're not complete yet, ACOTAR Crescent City, is very exciting as a reader who loves this world. Throne of Glass is complete. If you didn't know, this is an 8-book series and is my my love, okay? This is my favorite series I've ever read in my entire life. And then you have ACOTAR. This is already 5 books and it's not complete. I'm hoping the next one comes out this year. I have a feeling it's going to, but whoever really knows? I don't know. Okay, so these two series are very different from each other. I'm not going to give you a full review on the series, but I'll give you like a really quick synopsis in the best way that I can. So starting with ACOTAR, this is more, romance driven. This follows Feyre. She is human. She lives with her dad and her 2 sisters. She's like the bread and butter of the family. She goes out, she hunts, she brings back the food, she makes the money because her dad no longer can. Her sisters don't even try to help. Okay, so they know of the fairy lands. They try to keep their distance. They don't want nothing to do with the fairies. The fairies want nothing to do with the humans. But what happens is she goes out and she does something that she's not supposed to do, doesn't realize she does it, and as a punishment, punishment, she is taken by a fairy into the fairy lands, and she is forced to live there. Okay, so this is supposed to be a Beauty and the Beast retelling in the best way possible. So the fairy that takes her into the fairylands, his name is Tamlin. He is the High Lord of the Spring Court. She goes there, she lives with him, and she develops feelings for him and everything. I can't even say anything else because I don't want to give anything away. Just know that it's crazy. It's not what you expect. There's just so much that makes up this series, and I just don't want to be the reason anything is spoiled for you. So I'm going to stop there with that one. I will say, though, the first book in the series is not the best one, so it definitely picks up at the end. Push through this one, and I promise you, it's going to change your life, okay? And if that one doesn't, this one will. Throne of Glass, like I said, my favorite series of all time. Okay, so Throne of Glass follows Celaena Sardothien. She is raised as an assassin. She is then imprisoned, and she is summoned by the king to win her freedom back by becoming the king's champion and defeating other thieves and assassins. And the king's champion then works for the king on these secret missions. And so that is the synopsis of the first book. I am not going to tell you anything else. I just want you to know that this series is seriously a wild ride. There's so many twists and turns, so many things that happen in this book. You have romance in this book. You have romance, obviously, in both of them. I will say that as the series go on, they do get a little spicier, especially this one. There's really not a whole lot of spice in Throne of Glass at all, but I do feel like they start out as YA, and then as the series continues, they become like more adult style books, and that's probably because of how long she's spent writing these books as she's getting older, if that makes sense. I think we're gonna just stick with fantasy, and then we'll go into some of my favorite romance books. So one of my all-time favorite books right now, if you follow me on TikTok, I have been recently hyping this book up again since I've read it. I think I read it like October or November of last year. And the next one comes out very soon. We're going to get a novella and the second book within the next few months. Powerless by Lauren Roberts. This is a YA fantasy. There's no spice in it, but the tension and the banter make up for that in a way that you never knew was possible. I was literally I'm obsessed with this book just because of the tension and the way she wrote it. There's no other book out there with this kind of tension that I have read. If you've read one that's like that, please let me know. Please let me know what book that is so I can add it to my TBR. So this follows Payton, and she lives in this kingdom where you have the elites and then you have the ordinaries. Elites are born with these different types of powers, and then you have the ordinaries have no powers at all, and they're banished from the kingdom. If you don't have powers, you're not allowed to live in the kingdom because you're not seen as good enough. So Payton is actually an ordinary, and her dad raises her to pose as a sidekick so she can live in the kingdom, obviously. And she becomes very, very good at it. And she gets stuck in this predicament where she has to save the prince. And she does that. And because she does it, she is then called to be in these trials, which is very much like the Hunger Games. And that's why everyone's like, oh, if you like the Hunger Games, you need to read this book. It is very similar, but at the same time, I do think it's very different. So she goes and competes in these trials, posing as a sidekick, but while everybody else has these very extraordinary powers, and she just blew me away. And at the same time, in the trials is the prince that she saved. And they kind of go close. They have a love-hate relationship. And I think that's one of my favorite things about this book. This is supposed to be kind of like a enemies to lovers, rivals to lovers. The ending of this book it's a big cliffhanger. I did not expect it, and that's why I cannot wait to get my hands on the next book. This was 5 stars. This was so good. I recommend this to anybody that loves romance or fantasy. I just think that this is just a really good mix of both. Okay, another series that I love that is not complete is Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros, okay? I've talked about this book quite a bit as well. Just have a lot of love for this series. I think this is just one of those series where I've had so much fun reading it. I was constantly entertained. There's a lot of mixed feelings regarding the second book in this series, especially how it left off. I think we all can agree we're really upset with the way the second book, Iron Flame, left off, which is right up here. I don't know if you can see it. So again, I think that the next book is going to be coming out either really late this year or January of next year. Hopefully sooner, but honestly, I don't foresee that because she's also writing other books at the same time. If you're not familiar with the Fourth Wing series, this follows Violet Sorrengail, and she is pretty much thrown into this war college. She's raised to be a scribe, But her mom and her sister and her brother, they were all dragon riders. And so her mom was like, if we're dragon riders and you're my daughter, you're going to be a dragon rider. So she throws her into this war college where it's really either you make it or you die. And so she has no choice but to make it. And this is an enemies to lovers. So when she is thrown into this war college, she comes across somebody who is known to hate her and her family. And we know him as Xaden Ryerson. He is the leader of the one of the wings that's in this war college. And so she can't really get away from him. Everyone knows that he wants her dead. So she tries to keep her distance while still trying to survive this war college that she honestly is not sure if she's going to, because she has this disease where I can't remember the name of it, but she's very fragile. She's very small. She really can't like hold her seat on a dragon. So no one thinks she's going to make it, but she has like made it her mission to make sure that she does and prove everybody wrong. And I love this. I will say this one has maybe a teeny bit of spice. If I remember correctly, the second one does have more spice than this one. Definitely a really fun read. I highly recommend this one. You just give it a try. You won't know if you like dragons until you try. This is the first book I've ever read that's had dragons in it, and I will say that the dialogue with the dragons is probably the best part about this series. Okay, this next trilogy is one of my favorites. It is complete. I finished it in February. This is Defy the Night by Brigid Kemmerer. This is a very easy YA fantasy book to read. I just really loved it. It's adventurous. There is just so many fun things that happen in this book. You have a little bit of twists and turns that are going on. Very lovable characters. It is a little bit of like enemies to lovers. Some shocking things happen, especially in the beginning of this first book. So this follows Tessa, and she lives in Kandala, and Kandala is plagued with this sickness. And the only thing that can cure this sickness is a flower that they call the moonflower. The moonflower is very hard to get your hands on, and it's very expensive. So the wealthy hoard this flower, and if you have no money, obviously you can't pay for it. And so Tessa has made it her mission, because she's grown up to be an apothecary, to save as many people as she can. And so she is teamed up with this guy that she meets named Wes, and they meet up this special little hiding place in the middle of the night. They don't know each other outside of this hiding place, and they don't know what each other look like because they wear these masks. And they go out, they steal the moonflower from the wealthy, bring it back, make the elixir, and try to give it to as many people that they can that live in the wild, which is where all the poor people live, to save who they can. Now, it continues to not be enough. And so the king actually finds out that the moonflower is being stolen, and he sends out his, I guess you call it, the guard to figure out, I can't remember what it's called, the guard to figure out who is stealing this moonflower and giving it to the poor, because obviously this is a problem. And yeah, twists and turns. It's so good. If you haven't read it, you definitely need to give it a try. I think that this book is not talked about nearly enough. Okay, this is going to be the last fantasy book in this video. I saved this one for last because it's just so much different than the other ones. This is a duology. It is complete, and I love it. So this is Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross, and everyone always asks me where I get these covers. I get them from Blackwell's, and I love them. I could stare at them all day. I think you might be able to see the other one that's sitting behind me. I hope you can. So this follows Winnow and Kit. And Winnow and Kit work for the Oath Gazette. They are journalists. They are fighting for the same position at this, at their work. And so this is a bit of like a rivals to lovers. And then you have, so it mostly follows Winnow. You get more of her story in this one. Her brother's off to war, because we have a war between two gods going on. This is a historical romantasy. So this is like, I can't remember how long ago it was. But they're at war. Her brother's gone. Her mom is struggling with addiction, and so she kind of is like on her own, and she wants to write her brother. Well, during this time, she figures out that the typewriter her grandmother leaves her, it's like magical. She's able to type up her letters, send them under her wardrobe, and she thinks that they're going to her brother, because once she sends them under there, she opens the door, they're gone. They disappear. Somebody starts writing back, and it's not her brother. She doesn't know who is writing to her, how this is happening, but she forms this very special relationship with this person, and I just love it. It's very poetic. The writing is beautiful. The romance is beautiful. We have some twists and turns in this book. Yeah, I just loved every second of it. Now, the second book, I will say, I thought there would be more romance in it. I feel like she kind of backed away from it a little bit in the second book, and I was kind of upset about it, but it's still one of my favorites. I think it's very beautiful. I do love how the duology ended. But yeah, so if you're somebody who just likes a softer fantasy, you like a beautiful romance, I think that this would be a very, very good fit for that. Okay, now for the romance, we're going to go over a few of my favorite ones, starting with The Deal by Elle Kennedy. This is the first book in the Off Campus series by her. If you can't tell, this is a new cover. She came out with these recently with these sprayed edges. I got these at Barnes & Noble, and each one is so stinking cute. I did have the original covers. I wasn't crazy about them. You should look them up if you haven't seen them. I don't know. There's something about them that I didn't really like, but I really loved the stories, and so I was like, yeah, I need these on my shelf. So this is the first book. This is a hockey romance. This is the first hockey romance I've ever read. I would say they're more on the adult side. I think they are adult, if I remember correctly. They are a bit spicy, every single one of them. Each one follows a different couple, but all the guys in all these books are on the same hockey team, so you already know of them before you get to their book, which is kind of cool. And then as you go on in the series and you leave a couple, you go back. It goes back to them, and you get to figure out what's going on in their lives, which I love when a series does that. So yeah, each book follows a different couple. They each have their own struggles, and I just love how they're all connected in the end. It's a college hockey romance, and it's really adorable. Okay, something I really love, especially here lately, is a good cowboy romance, and I read this because so many people told me to read it after I finished Crescent City because I needed a really good palate cleanser. Done and Dusted by Lila Sage. I quickly became obsessed with this book. It is very short. I read it very quickly. This is a enemies to lovers, and it's done so well. So this follows Emmy and Clementine. Her name is Clementine. She goes by Emmy, and then you have Luke. Emmy is a professional barrel racer, and she has left home because she travels, and she can no longer saddle because something happens. So she goes back home. She has a fear of getting back on the horse because it's just kind of traumatizing to her how it happened. And she comes across Luke, who is her brother's best friend, who she grew up with. She never really understood him. They never really got along. But now that she's back in town and he owns the bar in town, and it's a very small town, she's kind of forced to be around him. And he also works on her dad's ranch, which is where she lives. So she has no choice but to be kind of stuck in his presence. And he kind of feels the same way about her. And he kind of takes her by surprise because he quickly learns something's going on. And he kind of is trying to help her, like, work through it without kind of stepping on anybody's toes, like, kind of, making her feel uncomfortable. And so they've built this relationship that's kind of shocking to them both. And it's really fun to just see the progression of their characters and how much they grow in this very short book. But it's very cute. It is spicy. It's an adult romance, so if you like spice, I think you would like this book. If you're just looking for a really quick read, this is a really good one for that. This one had me smiling constantly, and I just loved everything about this book. I literally have no complaints. So this is such a good book to go with if you're just needing like a good smile. Okay, so I now have a new favorite author. I've been devouring as many books as I can by her lately, it feels like, especially her YA books. There's just something about her writing that I love. And she's just a very captivating author. I love all these characters, and her books are just so funny and entertaining. And so one of my favorites by her is Better Than the Movies, and I've already seen this book, or I've already read it. I feel like I'm late to the game. Everyone talks about this book all the time, and obviously for good reasons, because it's so good. So this follows Liz and Wes. Liz Buxbaum, and the reason I need to tell you her last name is because he calls her Buxbaum, and I think it's super adorable for some reason, even though I would hate to have that last name, I feel like. But this isn't Enemies to Lovers. So Liz and Wes, they are next door neighbors their whole life. They grew up by each other. They've kind of gone on each other's nerves. They hung out with some of the same friends, never really got along, and now it's high school, prom's around the corner, and this is a hard time for Liz because her mom passed away when she was younger, and something that they used to do is watch rom-coms, talk about romance, what she wants her life to look like when she's older, and now that it's prom, she wants to make sure that she goes with somebody and it's meaningful to her. And so she's like on her mission to figure out who that somebody is. And at this time, somebody that she used to have a really big crush on, who moved away when they were younger, has now come back to town. And so she wants to go to prom with him. And so she asks Wes, kind of makes a deal with him, like, hey, I'll let you have the parking spot, which is something that they argue about every single day, is who's going to park in this parking spot. She's like, I will let you park here if you help me get his attention, because they're kind of friends. And he agrees. And during this time, they grow closer to each other and they become friends, and there's more about each other that they didn't know that they learn, and it's just so adorable, and I loved every second of this book. So I can't wait to read all of her books, because I have yet to read one I did not like. I'm about to start my 5th book by her, and I promise, and like trust me when I say, you will not be disappointed in one of her books. Like, there's no way. Okay, last but not least is the Magnolia Park series by Jessa Hastings, and I left this one last because this book is either you love it or you hate it. I just so happen to love this book. You probably know, because everyone has talked about it, the one thing that you were warned about before starting this series is how toxic it is. And people are like, oh, you say it's toxic, oh, it's fine. And so they go and start it, and then they're like, I cannot read any more of past the first book because it's too toxic. When I tell you it's toxic, I mean like probably the most toxic you can get. I've never read a book more toxic. The series after is pretty close, by Anna Todd. This one just takes the cake, okay? That's how you say it, right? Yeah, I think it is. Okay, so this follows Magnolia and BJ. There are 5 books so far in this series. There's going to be 7. So you have Magnolia and BJ, and then you have Daisy and Christian. So the 1st, the 3rd, and the 5th book follow Magnolia and BJ, and then every book in between follow Daisy and Christian. Now, we're 5 books in, and Magnolia and BJ's story is complete. There's going to be 2 more books in the series, and that's going to be Daisy and Christian. I wanted to show you this one because obviously it's the first book, but Magnolia and BJ, out of the 2 couples, they're my favorite. And people don't understand why when I say this. You won't understand why if you don't get through at least the 3rd book in the series. It's a total 360 flip. You think you know these characters, but you don't. You don't know them until you've gotten through the 3rd book at least. So Magnolia and BJ, they grew up friends. So they have the same friend group, they went to the same private school, and they eventually start dating. I think they're like 15 when they start dating. They date for 3 years. He cheats on her, they break up, but they still stay in the same friend groups. They can't really get away from each other. They still love each other, but they just don't know how to work through it. And you're like, well, why would they want to work through it? He cheated on her. Toxic, okay? Toxic. But you won't understand until you get to the 3rd book as to why that happened. So you need to get there to figure it out. It's not what you... I'm not going to say more. I'm not going to say more on that. Okay. So they still love each other. They both want to be together. This is a dual POV, so you get both of their feelings, which is really great. I love that. And I will say that her writing is very poetic. It's very beautiful. Like, I could literally highlight every other sentence in this book because of how beautiful it's written. And that's just something I really love about her writing. But it's just sad to see. They do, like, everything they can to hurt each other at the same time. And that's what's very, very devastating about this series, is just seeing how 2 people love each other so much, but they can do the things that they do in this book. Like, he sleeps with somebody, and then she starts dating somebody else. Like, to kind of just get under the other one's skin because they don't know how to talk through their feelings. And they don't care about the other people that they're dating or seeing. They only care about each other. So, very toxic, but again, I love it so much. It's very entertaining. If you like 90210, Gossip Girl, this is that same vibe. This is high society London, and I just really loved it. I loved how she referenced like what every single person, Magnolia, every single person's wearing in this whole series, and you could literally look it up and find it. There's just something about this series that is just so fascinating, and I loved it. I really loved it. And it's either you love it or you hate it, so go in with caution. That's it for my first video. I hope this comes together the way that I want it to. I hope to be posting like once or twice a week. I'm a mom and a teacher and I'm very busy, but this is something that I love so much. I love giving book recommendations, book reviews, and so I'm excited to just start on this platform and see where it goes. So if you want to find me on TikTok or Instagram, I will have those links down below. Subscribe and you can get notified when I post again. And again, just if you've made it to this point, thank you.